Coming up on Access Tech Live.
Apple versus the U.S. Department of Justice. Discovering new tech innovations at CSUN. Access AI by Ira.
This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo. The latest in tech and accessibility every week. Follow us now and get involved at Access Tech Live.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Access Tech Live. I am Stephen Scott. Marc Aflalo back with me again this and every week. How you doing, Marc?
I'm doing good. It almost feels like I'm never here, but I'm always here. It's like an appointment.
Yeah.
It's almost like every week, Stephen, I know where to be and when to be there. It's amazing how that works.
I love it. I love it. And we've got a great show lined up today. We're going to be finding out about some other cool companies we learned about at CSUN last week. Of course, the big assistive tech conference that happened in Anaheim, California. And we're going to introduce them to you today. Plus, Apple, as you heard in the introduction, is facing a rather uphill battle, it would seem, against the US Department of Justice. But what does that mean for us, the users of iPhones and Macs and Apple Watches and all of that? We're going to get into all of that today. Marc and I have certainly got a view to share. But first, let's get to the headlines with Marc.
Now, Access Tech Live headlines.
A little bit of a PSA to start here. If you get a random password reset request on your iPhone, you may be under attack from malicious users. A new vulnerability can allow attackers to make your phone pop up the password reset request endlessly. Then you'll get a call that appears to be from Apple offering some assistance. Now, don't be fooled. They can't do anything more than make the pop-up appear. Just dismiss it, and one at a time, they'll eventually go away. And don't trust any incoming calls from anyone claiming to be Apple. Rule number one with phishing attacks. Breaking news this morning, 4 Ontario school boards have launched a joint lawsuit in the amount of $4.5 billion against social media platforms TikTok, Meta, and Snapchat. The suit claims that the platforms are, quote, disrupting student learning and the education system. In a statement, the board director, Colleen Russell-Rollins, said the influence of social media on today's youth at schools cannot be denied. This is a developing story, and we've reached out to the board, who will be joining us next week to dive in a little bit deeper. Last week, as you know, Apple and the U.S. Department of Justice decided to start butting heads. Well, more like the DOJ sued Apple. This new antitrust lawsuit is centered around Apple's practices with the iPhone and App Store. The DOJ is accusing Apple of operating like a monopoly by restricting outside access to features like cloud streaming gaming, digital wallets, super apps, and messaging apps. Now, Apple responded almost immediately, arguing that the regulations from the regulators are selectively picking metrics that Apple's seem a little bit more dominant in the marketplace than they actually are, and regulating the behaviors that DOJ claim would diminish and negatively impact the experience customers have come to love about the phone. We're going to dive a lot deeper later on in the show and explain things one at a time. Household appliances have lagged behind other emerging technologies when it comes to audible access to digital displays that help people who are blind or partially sighted. Well, GE, General Electric, is aiming to change that with a new access kit created in partnership with the American Printing House for the Blind. It features a set of tactile stickers designed to make thousands of GE appliances more accessible for everybody. Appliances such as dishwashers, washers and dryers, toasters, microwaves, even slow cookers and air fryers. And the Access Kit is available now and can be purchased for only $19.99 US at geappliancesparts.com. We'll put that out on social media in case you missed it there as well. Uber Canada has been ordered to pay $35,000 to a man who used a wheelchair after the BC Human Rights Tribunal found he was discriminated against because of his disability. Now, while this is not the first report of similar discrimination, this is the first time that the ride-hailing app was found guilty in a public court. Uber Canada was ordered to offer those with disabilities access to rides. Now, the company argued that it simply provides the app and doesn't provide the service under the code. But the tribunal rejected the argument and declared that Uber contravened sections of the BC Human Rights Code, which precludes discrimination on the basis of physical disability and other factors. Big case for Uber, and big case against, human rights. Ira, the app, have announced a new service called Access AI, a new feature that allows users to interact with images and receive descriptions using AI within the Ira app. Our very own Stephen Scott and friend Sean Priest caught up with Troy Otilio, the CEO of Aira, to discuss the new features, plus its potential impact on call volume and wait times using the Aira app. We're going to break down that news and get to clips of that CEO as we detail things a little bit later on in the show. Feel like a lot of news this week, Stephen. A lot of things going on, but we're going to tie our question of the day into some of our news stories as well.
Yeah, it goes back to Uber, right? And a question that I think we'll probably be here all day with answers to. And the question is, have you ever had any issues with ride-sharing apps? And do let us know what in particular as well. And I think that's a really important question to ask. There are so many people who are going to be getting in touch. And of course, we know in the disability community, the amount of times someone has been rejected. I've been rejected. I only have a cane. I don't even have a guide dog. And I've been rejected from Uber cars. I know because they tell me they're arriving. The app tells me it's arriving. The car is there. And in the next minute, it just drives off. And what's worse, actually, to all of that is there are even instances where Uber drivers have marked down people, have, you know, in the rating that drivers give us, the consumer, they actually mark disabled people down. That's happening. That's actually quite disturbing that goes on.
Yeah, we got a lot of feedback, and that actually is one of the points someone brings up, but we'll bring it to you later on in the show. But it's not only people with disabilities, Stephen. There's people of all kinds that, have been waiting for a ride that was canceled the last second. They've even seen the car drive by, kind of get a glance at them, and then the ride's canceled. So if you've had any issues with the ride-sharing apps, do let us know on all our social media platforms at Access Tech Live. You can email us as well. It is feedback@accesstechlive.com, and let us know. We'll get to it a bit later on in the show. Stephen, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up, we're going to dig deeper into the news of the week, including Aira, of course, and your conversation with their CEO, and Apple versus the U.S. Department of Justice. How could it affect us in Canada? We'll talk about that and more after a quick break here on Access Tech Live.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Welcome back to Access Tech Live with me, Stephen Scott, Marc Aflalo here, of course, and we're diving into the big news of the day. That is Apple versus the U.S. Department of Justice. Marc, maybe we kick things off with explaining where this lawsuit actually came from before we dive into our opinions, of which, by the way, I have many.
Yeah, I mean, where does it come from? I mean, this has been in the works for probably a decade now. There's always been threats by the competition bureaus, Department of Justice, all governments saying that Apple is growing too big. In its case, in the press conference, they were basically comparing Apple's value to the gross domestic product of the United States and saying it actually is more valuable than the GDP of most known countries in the world. And then they go on to start breaking things down into what they call anti-competitive behavior. And I have to put that in kind of quotey fingers here, Stephen, because a lot of what they're basing this on, if you really dig down into the depth of it, is number one, the laws are really old. They're talking about 20-year-old anti-competition laws. This is something that, if you remember back in the day, Microsoft had a very similar lawsuit going against them because they didn't allow third-party browsers to be the default browser in the operating system. And really, what it comes down to Apple being so big, and they're saying that they have such an imprint on people with all the products and services that they do, that they're not adequately allowing third parties access to their ecosystem and an ability to let everybody kind of play on a level playing field and compete. And they've broken it down into a couple different places. So they started with, apps developers having access to non-Apple apps and APIs in the system. They talked about stopping super apps. They call things super apps that have apps underneath them. So, Apple comes back and says something like, well, Facebook is on the platform and they've got multiple apps, WeChat, so many other different apps. And then they go into things like cloud game streaming. Honestly, Stephen, I don't know about you, but I look at this as almost a little bit of a witch hunt. And it's almost like they're trying to penalize, or it feels like they're trying to penalize success and growth. A company's getting so big, and they're basically saying, you're getting too big, you're getting too popular, we have to penalize you in some way, shape, or form. Because when you dig down deep on all these things, and we can go into line by line what they are and what Apple retorted with, a lot of it's being corrected anyway and has been corrected over time. Like, they're complaining that cloud game streaming wasn't allowed, but guess what? They chose not to. Xbox chooses not to use Apple's ecosystem, and they make it available in the browser. GeForce Now, same thing. Apple's never stopped them, and they've just never tried in the first place to put an app in the App Store. So how do you make that argument? And I know you've got some strong feelings about all this too.
I do, and I always try to come to this without sounding like an Apple fanboy. And I am an Apple fanboy, right? So, yeah, it is difficult. I kind of feel a little bit protective towards this multi-million, trillion-dollar company, right? But at the same time, you have to look at this and say, well, okay, hang on, let's be fair here. Let's think about this. When Microsoft were taken to court back in the 1990s, they had 95% market share. That's a big number, right? That was pretty much every PC, every computer was Microsoft. They were making you use Internet Explorer. There was lots of anti-competitive stuff going on. Good reason, I think, for a case like that to come out. And it actually ushered in and allowed Apple to flourish. It's important to remember that. But now we're looking at Apple, which has about a 55 to 60% market share. And there are options out there for people. I love the idea of this being
even more options nowadays, right? With Windows and Linux and everything that's out there. I think the competitive landscape is actually larger, again, thanks to in part to that Microsoft lawsuit and the way things have changed in terms of the landscape of companies like Apple being able to flourish in this. So getting the finger pointed at them does seem a little bit pointed. There are other companies out there that have very large imprints. Look at Samsung's, look at Sony's of the world. Look at those companies who have more than just phones and computers. They have way more, and they're not pointing the finger at them for anything.
It feels to me like what they're saying is, you know what, you've built an ecosystem here that works really, really well, and Windows and Google haven't done that. So Apple, that's your fault. Well, hang on, wait a minute. It's not Apple's fault that Windows and Google and other companies haven't come up with the same ability, the same way to work together, the same way, for example, I can start an iMessage on my Mac and I can continue on my phone. I can, start a FaceTime call on my phone. I can take it to my HomePod. All of that is possible because of an ecosystem. Is that unfair on other companies? No, because guess what? You could innovate and do something similar and compete. Now, in fairness, the other companies aren't saying this. The other companies are very quiet on this issue at the moment because they don't want the finger pointed at them. But the Department of Justice here seems like it is 5 years out of date. The whole argument to me is out of date. I almost feel like Tim Cook is about to jump up and down and say, would you just wait till iOS 18 is launched? All of this will be fixed. There's only one area I think there's a chink of light here for the DOJ, and that is around iMessage. Because I think the difference with iMessage here, the argument that is being made is that Android users have an inferior experience texting back and forward with someone on an iPhone. And I think that there's some truth there, because it's a deliberate choice by Apple to make that an inferior experience. Yes, they're using a system called SMS, the short message service, which has been around forever, and that's not Apple's fault. But they could choose to bring in, and could have chosen sooner, to bring in rich communication systems, RCS, which is the newer way of being able to send emojis and videos and images and all of that. They could have brought that in sooner. So I think the DOJ have something there. But again, that is being addressed in iOS 18. There are some issues, though. They're bringing in a version of 2019. So someone at Apple has to clearly get the license upgrade for RCS, and then they'll be able to get the newer version. And that would allow that to happen. It's just a very, very difficult thing.
Stephen, how do you think this is going to trickle down to other countries? I know that a lot of people and analysts are watching. They've got the binoculars out. They're watching to see how the DOJ, conducts themselves, how Apple conducts themselves, and are probably, wondering, should this be something that we tack ourselves onto, but are probably taking the stance of, let's just wait and see how this unfolds. This could be a 10-year battle. By the time we're done with this battle, it could be so far in the past that it makes no sense whatsoever. But where do you think this affects other countries like Canada?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, I'm looking at this from a different perspective. I'm looking at this from the European Union perspective, where we saw major attempts to go after Apple, and that some would argue brought about the advent of USB-C. That's not Apple's view, of course. They say they were doing it anyway. But it did certainly push them forward to do this. So it can have an impact on individual countries. And we're even seeing in the EU, for example, how it's having an impact on people who are inside the EU versus outside of the EU. Different iOS experiences are happening. So it depends, I guess, on the countries. And I think what's happened here is the EU decision to go after Apple emboldened the US Department of Justice to go after Apple. That could be the same in other countries. And Canada does have the ability to, and certainly has the nous to go up against these big companies. They may well do that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of governments are just honestly going to wait and see to see how this unfolds. And maybe this is an opportunity for people to realize that these competition rules are not terribly specific and a little bit too vague, and let other people, we are humans. We have the choice. One of the arguments is that they say it's hard for people who are Apple users to switch to Android. And I love Apple's response, which is basically, we provide a tool to do this easy. Like, we actually created the tool for you to switch to another platform. And they go on to say, and I quote, perhaps the customers just love Apple products, as their argument, which I think really kind of says everything there, which is really, the users have a choice. We do have a choice. Yes, there are features that we like in other devices. That's called competition in the first place. And competition, at the end of the day, makes us as consumers win. I think we're the ones who are going to walk away as a winner, regardless how this goes. I don't think we're going to see any negative effects on the ecosystem that Apple has built. On the contrary, I think, like the European Union introducing USB-C and third-party apps and sideloading and stuff like that, we're going to see similar things like that and concessions made by Apple to make everybody happy and to actually make the experience a lot better for everybody in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's great opportunity here for Apple to stand up and make a good case, and I think they can. I think the other benefit Apple has, and this is unlike other companies, they do have a fantastic fan base. So I think there's a lot of people who will stand up for Apple and say this is not right. And of course, we're in the middle of a year where we have a major US election going on. We cannot skip past that fact. There's a huge amount of politics in this as well.
Yeah. Other companies in the news, Ira. Ira's in the news announcing a new AI feature called Access AI. Can you recap that a bit for us?
Yeah, so you might know about Ira. It's the company where, if you need access to information and perhaps you can't see that information, you can call Ira. And, I've got my smartphone in my hand here. Out of the back camera that I'm pointing to right now on my iPhone here, I can actually have an agent see out of that camera and talk back to me and explain, audio describe whatever it is I need to know. So let's just say it's matching socks, for example, which, has been a thing I've done. Or perhaps, does this T-shirt have a stain on it? That's always good to get checked out. And of course, you can call an Ira agent and you can talk to them, which is fantastic. So you're talking to an actual human being. But what they've done here is something a little bit different, because what they've done is they've brought in AI. Now, of course, everyone's adding AI to every product we know about, right? That's how it works. But this is different because, like Be My AI, which you may have heard of, we've talked about it with Mike Buckley on the show, it allows you to send an image up to the app. So within the Ira Explorer app, you can actually upload an image, and then accessibly query that image about information. So I could take a picture of this top and ask if it has a stain on it. I'd be interested to know what the answer to that would be, whether it thinks it's a
The answer
logo
is
or a
no, Stephen.
stain.
The answer is no.
Well, that's good. At least this top's okay. That's good. But it's interesting, right? Because it allows you to do that, but then you can go one step further. You can query the image further, but then you can also connect with an agent. This is the most important bit. You can connect with an agent to get the answer to further questions. So again, you're sending that image to a human for verification. So I was quite lucky, as you said at the top of the show, to catch up with Troy Ottilio. Now, he is the CEO of Aira, not BMI. I get mixed up with all of these companies, but he is the CEO of Aira, and he talked to me to find out more about this new feature.
You can provide images, you can take pictures, you can get descriptions, you can interact with it. You can do that with a lot of apps. But one of the main differences with Aira is that you can also interact with the agents. So we are stitching together the experience so that, when there's a point in time when you're not confident about what the AI is providing back, that description, or you just want it to be verified, you can ask the agent, and I'm not talking about a call. You just simply mark the image or the description, and then you say you want some more information. You say that you want it verified, and free to you, the agent will respond in 20, 30 seconds with either everything looks great or here's what the AI didn't catch. This was a hallucination, or it was missing this information.
That is Aira CEO Troy Ottilio. Now, Stephen, you mentioned privacy, but at the end of the day, someone really can share their bank statement or personal information with Aira agents, and in turn, that uses AI and third-party AI services. So how can Aira promise the same level of privacy for users of Access AI service?
Yeah, and that's the tricky question, isn't it? Because you've got two things going on here. You've an Aira agent who you're paying for, and that is within a secure world. But once you start embedding AI into technology, you then have the issue of breaking it open out into the wider world. What's happening to that image when you upload it to the app? That's a question I put to Troy Ottilio. Here's what he had to say.
When you use Aira or any app, the guarantees about how your data is handled are in those sometimes long to read terms of service privacy policy. As an aside, we work with an attorney who focuses on making this simple as possible language, but ultimately we didn't have to change our terms of service. We didn't change our privacy policy to launch this. Why? Because you get the same guarantee about your data, as you just mentioned, with our Access AI. How do we do that? We're using the paid enterprise version of AI, and in a minute I'm going to tell you we also have access to Gemini, which is another model. So whether it's Be My AI, whether it's Gemini, or other models that we may include in the future, we are going to leverage the enterprise or secure version, and I'll describe a little bit on that, but ultimately we give you the same guarantee about your data. It is only it's only stored with Aira. These images that are going to AI are not. The OpenAI folks do not have access to them. The Gemini folks do not have access to them. Your data is handled in the same manner that it's handled with agents.
Okay, so clearly, Stephen, they've obviously thought that through, which is absolutely great. Now, I got to ask you a question here, because there's been chatter amongst the community about how long Aira agents take to answer calls. Do you think this is going to be the same concern when it comes to Access AI?
Yeah, well, if you think, now we can query images, so suddenly there's more questions being asked of the agents, so more agents being asked those questions. You know what? I asked Troy exactly that in our interview on Double Tap, Mark, and I'm pleased to say that Troy did not shy away from answering it.
We know that we have been not staffing fast enough at Aira. We monitor that internally. It's something the team has been working on. It may allow me to point out that during last year, we started a process to convert our agents from being contractors to employees. We didn't make a big announcement about this, but I realized that it helps, explain a little bit about what we've been doing to address wait times. We knew in 2023 that we have a service that is growing, and to make it even more attractive to be able to bring on more agents and also to do a better job scheduling, it was time to move to the next phase of IRA, where the visual interpreters, who are professionals, are employees of the company with benefits. And during that process, we had to hire differently. And I think last year, at the end of the year, some of the call times, some of the wait times were well beyond what we expect, what you expect. And now, beginning this year and continuing on, we're at a much better staffing level. Is AI going to, reduce call volume? Is it going to increase call volume? Because one might argue that with more functionality in the IRA app, more people will download it, which is our hope. More people will engage with it, and more people will make use of access offers. So it is our hope that we actually get more calls. That's why our beta is not a public beta, but it's by I'd say invite, or within the app you sign up, and we'll be adding people daily, weekly, but we are not going to add everyone at once, because we want to make sure that our staffing and the wait times are not affected by potential increased use of IRA visual interpreters.
Okay, Stephen, so here's the question du jour. Is the feature available now?
Well, that's what everyone wants to do, isn't it? Well, look, it's I'm using your little finger quotes again. It coming soon to everybody. But like Be My AI before it, and like other AI rollouts, this does take time, because obviously this can overload a system very, very quickly. So a very slow rollout. However, the good news is it will be free. You don't need to pay for it, which is wonderful. There is a beta program you can find at IRA's website, and I'll give you that address in just a moment. You do need to have an IRA account, though. You do have to sign up, which involves either giving your email address or your phone number, just like everything else these days. But you can download the app. You can try it yourself. It's on Apple and Google's App Store as well. Just search for IRA Explorer. To spell that out for you, AIRA Explorer. That's IRA Explorer. Check out the website as well for more information. That is IRA, AIRA.io.
Stephen, we talked a little bit about CSUN over the past couple of weeks. Well, it's over. It happened last week, and we had a team there to capture all the excitement on the show floor. And we're going to meet some of the really cool companies that you didn't meet because you weren't there from CSUN after a quick break here on Access Tech Live.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Now, back to Access Tech Live. The latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Now, CSUN was a resounding success once again in its 39th year. It was an incredible event. And as expected, Stevie Wonder made several appearances at the show and exhibit halls. He does this almost every year. In fact, he seems to make a point of making sure he's at CSUN every year so that he can find out about the latest in accessible tech. Hey, someone should tell him about Access Tech Live. That's a great idea. Did he?
Yeah, that'd be nice. I know. I noticed that when Stevie's there, you're never in the same place at the same time. I don't know.
I'm stroking my chin. Well, look, we were there virtually, which is good news, through our producer and friend Tim, and we caught up with some pretty fun companies. And Mark, you're going to start off by telling us about one of them.
Yeah, Brava is a company that developed a countertop oven. We actually saw this first at CES. Really cool because it blends new technology and connectivity with the convenience of a countertop oven that actually cooks with UV light and various light technologies. Now, the oven, as I said, was unveiled at CES, but we weren't aware back then about all of the accessibility features. Let's find out more.
Hey everybody, I'm Travis Ray. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Brava. Brava is the world's first smart countertop oven that cooks with infrared light. Brava was launched in 2018 and was the vision of our two co-founders who were friends in high school, one a software guy, the other a hardware guy. And one of their moms wanted a cooking robot that could know when everything was done so that she wouldn't have to go back and forth from the kitchen. We have 6 lamps in the Brava, 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top. These lamps are super powerful. They go from ambient to full power in less than a second, whereas a regular oven uses heater coils or gas, which slow to heat up and slow to cool down. Our lamps are instant full power on and off. Brava is great for anybody that likes to cook, but it's especially good for anybody that's living with any kind of physical or intellectual or developmental disability. Brava is an amazing product for caregivers at home who are trying to cook well for the people that they're taking care of. It's because we have 8,500 fully automated recipe programs underneath the hood in Brava that are all programmed by professional chefs. Each one of those recipes, all you have to do is load the tray, select what you want to cook, press the green button to start, and it automatically shuts off when it's done. So there's a lot of safety features that are built into the Brava. Number 1, it stays cool to the touch on the outside, even the door. Number 2, we have a camera in Brava so that you can watch your food cook from the mobile app. This is really great for caregivers, whether it's your parents that are living in an independent living facility or whether it's your spouse that's at home that you want to make sure that they're cooking safely. The caregiver can even have the app downloaded onto their phone so that they're able to see a mobile version of what's cooking inside. They can even stop the cook from the mobile phone too.
That is absolutely fantastic. And I love the fact that at CSUN you get to experience, like you're saying, all the features we didn't hear about at CES. That's really cool. Let's move on, though, to a Canadian company that was in presence.
Yeah, the Canadian company is actually Gentex Corporation, and their product is eSight, something we have talked about in the past. It's a product that stimulates synaptic activities, I'll get the words out, and can help people with significant central vision loss achieve better vision. Let's find out about their new edition called the eSight Go.
Hi there, I'm Roland Matern, and I'm the Director of Marketing for eSight by Gentex Corporation. Today we're showcasing the latest eSight technology called the eSight Go. It's a wearable assistive technology for central vision loss. The eSight Go leverages a camera and monitor systems, one in front of each eye, and we use the camera image projected onto the retina and enhance the vision so people get their central perception back. eSight Go is primarily targeted at people with central vision loss with remaining peripheral vision. For example, macular degeneration, Stargardt disease, and diabetic retinopathy patients are excellent candidates for eSight. Our users leverage eSight Go for many applications of activities of daily living. So whether it's cooking, cleaning, getting groceries, walking the dog, or pursuing hobbies, eSight Go can help you have that central visual perception that allows you to pursue your passions. So the eSight technology has been clinically proven to give you 7 lines enhancement on distance acuity, 6 lines of enhancement in near acuity, and 12 letters of contrast. We've also clinically demonstrated that we have significant improvement in facial recognition scores, in quality of life scores, and in scores pertaining to completing activities of daily living.
So really all of that to say these are feature-filled headsets. They're incredible. But I want to talk about smart glasses, Mark, because surely at CSUN there would be a few smart glasses on display.
Yeah, specifically our next product is another pair of quote-unquote smart glasses. Ava, it's a company that developed smart glasses that allow people with all types of disabilities to actually control gadgets, kind of like telepathy, but not. For example, smart home devices. He gives a lot of examples. Let's learn more from Naeem. I can't even pronounce this. Their founder and CTO.
My name is Naim. I'm the founder and CTO of Ava. So this smart glasses is one of our newest device. So the reason why we developed these glasses is to enable people with mobility impairment or speech communication disorders or practically anyone to be able to control their devices, like smart home devices, and being able to control their wheelchairs and communicate seamlessly just by using their attention and subtle gestures. Just by turning my head and blinking using these new glasses, I can control this accessible keyboard and say, I want to turn on my TV. It also has applications for augmented reality and virtual reality. So people can control the menu and items in the virtual environment, again, seamlessly, just using their eye movement and the subtle gestures, like a blink or a clench. We have different form factors. They come in a form of earbud, smart glasses, and headbands. All of these devices, they monitor users' brain and biosignals to understand their attention and subtle gestures. We understand where they're facing, where they're looking, or what gestures they're producing. And most importantly, to communicate seamlessly. And this increases their autonomy.
Yeah, it's just incredible. The amount of technology that is available and out there right now is quite incredible, because when we talk about smart glasses, Mark, you're always thinking about audio and video, but not that kind of technology. That's very, very impressive. Hey, listen, quick shout out to Tim, who has been doing a power of work for us at CSUN in Anaheim last week. So thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I gave him a couple bounties, and one of them is actually coming up. Sony, small Japanese company that actually had a really large footprint over at CSUN. So when we come back, we're going to meet Sony. And did we actually see Stevie Wonder? Stick around. It's Access Tech Live.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
And we're back on Access Tech Live. Now, we've already met some cool companies and learned about what they do as a result of being at CSUN virtually last week, thanks to Tim. Mark, what else do we have lined up?
Well, a cool company called School Health is one that I had not heard of before CSUN. They're a provider of health supplies and services to professionals in the education setting, from preschool all the way to college. And they had some pretty neat things on display from different companies. So let's hear more from Jody Shooter, who's a specialist in special education over at School Health.
School Health is a third-generation family-owned business who is known for vision screeners in the schools, as well as defibrillation and emergency preparedness. We also have a special ed division. We have a sports medicine, physical education, early childhood, and vision and hearing screenings. So Cosmos are little round Bluetooth switches. They change colors when you tap them. There's multiple colors you can change them to. So if you have low vision, you might want to use the reds and the yellows. If you have someone who has a favorite color, you could change it to a hot pink, say, for someone else. There's such a variety of uses that they can be. They're very flexible in that way. So you could use all 6 of them on an app, or you could pull a couple aside and use them in a variety of different ways. So you could be Bluetoothing them to your computer for that person that needs a right click, and it doesn't really matter what the disability might be. They might be looking for low vision to work on seeing the different colors. They might be working on their gross motor skills, their fine motor skills. So our OTs really like it for that. Or building their strength and mobility is also very important. The next thing that I'm really excited to share here at CSUN is the portable blackout sensory tent. It can be used in so many different ways. You could use it in the back of a gymnasium if the balls are just a little bit too loud. You could use it for low vision. You could have people going in because it is truly a blackout. It's great for CVI students to work on things. I love that you can set it up and take it down in just a couple minutes. It comes with its own duffel bag, and it's a very low-cost way to just create a quiet space that can be used for so many things. In today's world, lots of the stadiums that we have, whether it's the NFL or the hockey leagues, the NHL, or even if it's our amusement parks, they also are starting to appreciate the need for these quiet areas, and this is just a really great low-cost way to set it up. The next thing I want to show you about is a brand new product by ScanMarker. It is a text-to-speech device. You're able to touch to read. You can scan across any print material that you'd like to read. I'm going to scan just a couple lines to show you. Then it'll go ahead and read it out loud. You'd have Bluetooth earbuds in. It does have a speaker. It's a little loud in here. You can replay this as many times. If you have dyslexia or anything where you might need to repeat, that's okay. And also if you want to hear one word, you could just click on that word and hear that word out loud. You can also look up the word in the dictionary by just clicking over here. And then it would read out your definitions for you as well. So great text-to-speech device. And also it has Translate. So if you're online, you can translate in hundreds of languages to be able to communicate. You can speak into it also. So I could say, hello, how are you? And it would say, hola, ¿cómo estás? And vice versa. You could do that back and forth. There's also a voice recorder built in, but really great product to help someone who needs access to print materials, but hearing it auditory.
And what I love about that, Mark, is the fact that you have this kind of technology going into schools where, and we're going to talk about this next week, following that breaking news at the top of the show, they're trying to move away from kids having access to their smartphones in the classroom. This could help.
Yeah, because it helps distract them with something that actually is relevant to the education, which is obviously a smarter move in the end. Stephen, last but not least from CSUN is Sony. Sony made a pretty big splash about the fact that they were going to be at CSUN, and from what I understand, the exhibit there, the booth, was absolutely enormous and fairly significant. No one did not know they were there, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and Sony have been actually quite recently. I mean, I know they've been around for a long time as a company, but more recently getting into the accessibility world and in some interesting areas. We're going to hear about one area first up, but I want to delve into some of the other areas because there's one particular device they had on show that I was very excited about. But we'll hear from the company first.
Let's do that
Hi,
now.
my name is Melanie Mincham, and I'm an accessibility researcher with Sony. And we're here at CSUN 2024 to demonstrate some built-in accessibility features across all of our products. So our first product is our Bravia Sony TV. Our newest model has the most amount of accessibility features, including talkback from the initial setup. So that means that a completely blind person can set up the TV independently. We also have the option for people who have low vision of text magnification, as well as color inversion and grayscale. So that can help with increasing contrast for different content, as well as on-screen text. So another feature we have for visually impaired people on our latest Bravia TV is the Google Voice Assistant. So that means that you don't need a remote to access your favorite shows. So for example, you could say, hey Google, open YouTube and play Access Tech Live. So another thing about the TV that can be hands-free, which would be good for both visually impaired and people with mobility impairments, is the built-in camera gestures. So the TV itself comes with a camera, and that means that you can wave your hand in specific ways to navigate through your TV. So you don't need the remote at all, which is really helpful. And all of these features are already built into the Sony Bravia TV, the latest models that are coming out. And something else that we're rolling out that we're extremely excited because it came directly from our user testing that we've done with blind and low vision individuals is we're introducing a new raised QR code. So it's a raised outline around a QR code that blind and low vision users can scan with their phone camera and then access all of our instruction manual as well as the key steps to set up their devices. We're also excited to tell you about some new features that we have for people who are hard of hearing or have a hearing impairment. So some of our features include the volume reset button, available built into the TV, and that allows you to set your TV to a specific volume so that every time you turn on your TV, it will be at that volume. That's helpful for two reasons. The number one is if you are blind and you rely on TalkBack to navigate your TV, you don't need to worry about the TV being too low. Maybe a family member has, really likes the volume low, and every time you turn on the TV, you can't hear it. So in this case, if you set that specific volume, you will always be able to hear it from the time you power the TV on. On the flip side of that, if you have a family member who likes to listen to the TV really loudly, you don't have to worry about turning the TV on and having everything blasting out loud, so you can always have a comfortable volume.
Yeah, I remember when Bose had something like this years ago when it had like a night mode. So when you would turn the TV back on in the morning, it would reset the volume. And even at nighttime, it would bring the volume down a little bit, which is cool. I mean, I love all this stuff. But I've got to say, I mean, aside the fact that, great TVs, and certainly I'll be looking at Sony for the next TV I want to buy, I was more interested in their robot dog. It's called Aibo, A-I-B-O. And this is supposedly like a dog that can learn and apparently can pick up on things, and you can train it. You can buy accessories for it. You can buy a food bowl. You can buy a water bowl. You can buy a bone for a robot dog. I will say, though, it does cost around $3,000. So, considered purchase category for sure.
And they recommend you getting two of them, like more than one. Of course, your dogs need companions. Why would you buy just one?
Just brought out the new Espresso edition, which is kind of cool.
You know a little bit too much about Aibo. I have a feeling there's a support group for this. Stevie Wonder, I mean, it's hard to miss Stevie Wonder when he walks through the halls at CSUN. He did make an appearance, and you actually got a video sent to you by Matt Ader over at Vespero. He showed up at this cocktail party at the end of the day, and someone was quick enough to pull out their smartphone and get us some video of it, and here it is.
It is always an honor to be here, to come to this convention, but a chance to thank all of the people who are making it possible for us, those who are blind, low vision, with disabilities of any kind, to make it possible for us to see the world, to have complete inclusion on this planet is such a wonderful thing and such a blessing. So as much as I would thank the writer of the first song that I had to become #1 that I didn't write, as excited as I was about that, I'm as excited today to say to all of you, thank you. And you are the reason with what you've done and what you're doing makes it possible for me to not only have technology that I can use to write but as well to discover the world to write more about. Thank you.
Yes.
That is the voice of Stevie Wonder at CSUN making an appearance there. They panned to the crowd at one point. Stevie, you see everybody kind of enjoying their cocktails at the end of the day, but everybody glued to Stevie as he made his, I guess, final appearance over there at CSUN. And we'll try to get you there next year, I promise. Coming up, we've got to wrap things up with the answers to our question of the day, which is, have you ever had any issues with ride-sharing apps? Let us know. This is Access Tech Live. We'll get to your answers after a quick break. Stick around.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
And we're wrapping up here at Access Tech Live, answering your question or getting the answers to the question of the day here on the show. Have you ever had any issues with ride-sharing apps? Of course, this comes off the news of Uber earlier. Let us know what is the question we were asking. Marc, quite a lot of answers, I believe.
Yeah, we got the first one here from Neil. It says, I've had Uber cancel on me less than a minute from pickup. I wonder if they didn't like my look, with little googly eyes showing there. I hope not, Neil. I mean, I don't know who you are. I've never met you, but you must be a very handsome looking person. I dare not say.
Too handsome for the car.
Too happy. We got one from Fly Zapper. It's a pretty long one. It goes, I recently broke my leg and I can't drive. I have a small folding knee scooter to get around. I've been using Uber to get to and from work, and as soon as I request a ride, I message the driver to let them know about my injury and the scooter. Many times, the driver cancels the ride as soon as I send the message, and other times they accept it, but are obviously annoyed. My passenger rating has plummeted, and it's always from drivers who don't want my scooter in their trunk. Eesh, this is unfortunately, we're seeing more instances like that. But our next response is kind of interesting because it gives a different perspective here. This is Jason, Jayson, writes, I'm a rideshare driver, and as long as whatever you have fits in my trunk and the lid closes, I have no issues. I've given hundreds of rides to people with wheelchairs, service animals, whatever. However, I will tell you that the problem we face is that we're paid less than minimum wage to drive. So anything that takes even 5 minutes extra can really hurt us financially. It's not an excuse, but drivers probably resent the extra work for already low pay. You see, there's always three sides to the story, right?
There is, but there's also another side to this, which is the law. You do have to carry service animals And people in wheelchairs, it's against the law to refuse the access to that. So it's not about your money. If I would say if that's the case, then that's
maybe
on
shouldn't
you.
be doing this.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly. Find a new
it's another
job.
profession you should be doing. Listen, a lot of people, I think, also went to things like ride-sharing services during the pandemic and when times were tough, right? Because it was the easy path of least resistance. I got a car. Let me see something I can do pretty quick. But yeah, see, there are rules to follow in every single aspect of life, and this happens to be one of them. Michelle writes us, I was denied rides by a Lyft and 3 Uber rides because I was traveling with my service dog. Even local taxis will slow down and then drive off at times. It is extremely difficult for me to get around. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, Stephen. It's not. Listen, I've had rides canceled on me. I've had Uber Eats canceled on me. I remember we were ordering Uber Eats to a family who had a loved one just pass away, and we wanted to send a meal to their home, and we were all excited that we were sending something. And no joke, 5 minutes before it was supposed to arrive, the restaurant canceled on us. So I'm running out trying to scramble to make sure that the people have food to eat at the house. There are, unfortunately, we've come to rely on some of these services a little bit too much, in my opinion. And this is unfortunately the mess that we end up finding ourselves in.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And, like you say, we're kind of pinning on Uber here, but, there are other taxi companies who also refuse service to other people as well for lots of different reasons. It's definitely a problem in the disability community for lots of different reasons. And I'm not saying that problem is worse or exacerbated, but it is a little bit exacerbated in the disability community because it's clearly a decision that is being made, especially when it comes to service animals. There's a real issue here, and it's an ongoing issue. I have a friend who has had 300 refusals by Uber in particular. 300, he counts them. He actually keeps a diary of this, and he's been promising to take it to court if it gets any worse, because this just goes on and on and on. And he's not unique. This is not unusual. And if you're downgrading someone as a result of being blind or being in a wheelchair, and you're saying, well, I'm not taking that person and I'm also downgrading you and giving you a 1-star rating, that's not good. So, big issues here. There are lots of laws to follow. Uber are not above the law, and they need to learn that. And these other companies need to also learn that as well. You're providing a service. It's very important people understand that. But it's a very, very interesting area. And I imagine we'll come back to this topic in the weeks and months to come.
Absolutely. And I can promise you next week on the show, look how prepared we are, Stephen. I know what's on next week. We're going to be talking to someone from the Toronto school boards about that news story off the top about them suing social media companies for $4.5 billion. And we're going to be talking about the upcoming solar eclipse that's happening on April the 8th. We're bringing in an expert, Stephen, to answer all our juicy questions. So on behalf of everybody on expert, exactly. On behalf of everybody who appeared on this week's show, and of course, thanks to our friend Tim for heading out to CSUN for us. Thank you for being with us. We will catch you again on our next episode next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Access Tech Live. Follow us online on all social media at Access Tech Live. Email us feedback@accesstechlive.com. Hosted by Stephen Scott in Glasgow and Marc Aflalo in Montreal. Written by Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo. Producer, Marc Aflalo. Live show director, Anastasia Spalding-Stenhouse. Technical director, Caitlin Robinson. Audio, Jordan Mulgrave. Live graphics and playback, Kingsley Juco. Graphics coordinator, Eliza Rocco. Integrated Described Video Specialist, M. Williams. Supervising producer, Michelle Dudas. Produced in collaboration with Aflalo Communications, Inc. and Double Tap Productions. Copyright 2024, Accessible Media, Inc.
An AMI original production.